battle was raging in the king's mind. He stood trapped between two bitter paths, either continue to protect his self-esteem and the promise made to his partner by forcing the decision through, or back down before the dry tradition. Faced with the stark reality in black and white, Charles's pride as a monarch was deeply wounded. He stared at the dossier, his fingers tightening slightly. A fierce internal traditional principles his sister was using to bind him. On the opposite side, Queen Camilla sensed her husband's hesitation through each of his broken breaths. Her chest heaved beneath her elegant silk blouse, her usually intelligent eyes now filled with frustration and a hint of helplessness. She realized the legal wall Anne had erected was far too solid, reinforced by Charles's own past commitments. However, pride and maternal love would not allow her to surrender easily. Camilla gently placed a hand on the arm of Charles's chair, a gesture meant to impart strength and remind him of his had long been known as one of the most dedicated, steadfast, and principled members of the royal family. She was the embodiment of the discipline and strict traditional values her mother had left behind. Unlike the monarchy's credibility, the loyal employee decided they could not remain silent. The classified file was immediately copied and dispatched through the most discreet channel. The destination was the residence of Princess Anne. As the second child of Queen Elizabeth II, Anne, like her brother, who often dreamed of reforms, Anne viewed the monarchy through the lens of duty, public service, and the supremacy of the rule of law. She understood that every privilege granted without merit or proper process would be a self-inflicted wound to the family's integrity. As the leaked documents were placed on Anne's desk at sunset, the core departments under the direct instruction of the king's private office. This lack of transparency was not a mere technical oversight. It was a deliberate circumvention of protocol, intended to evade the scrutiny of senior royals and constitutional lawyers. Fully aware of the gravity and the risk of a nepotism scandal that could shake, a severe crisis that could rip through the already fragile veil of the royal family's credibility amidst the rising tide of anti-monarchist sentiment. Anne's unwavering, entirely selfless look caused Charles to suddenly freeze. In that moment of facing the potential collapse of the monarchy, his mind trembled slightly, and the distance between the nib and the signature line seemed to have become an insurmountable gulf. The last rays of the sunset faded completely behind the groves in the palace garden, giving way to the darkness that enveloped the space outside the window. Inside the room, the pressure from Princess Anne transcended the present, journeying back to distant memories. He remembered the dignified posture, the wise eyes, and the teachings on the sacrifice of self-interest from his mother, the late Queen Elizabeth II. Throughout her more than 7 decades of rule, she had never once allowed personal affection to cross the constitutional red line. The weight of the crown his mother had left behind seemed to press heavily upon his shoulders, reminding him of the price of capriciousness. The fountain pen in Charles's hand, a strategic, flexible decision that aligned with the pulse of a new era. Without giving the two any time to regain the upper hand, Anne walked straight up to the desk and slammed the black leather briefcase down. Her movement was so resolute that the crystal paperweight on the desk rattled slightly. She looked directly into her brother's eyes, her gaze devoid of the slightest compromise, the look of someone executing justice. To Anne, family affection, or theories of a modern monarchy, were nothing but rationalizations masking favoritism, a dangerous precedent that could erode public trust in the crown's legitimacy. Anne unlocked the briefcase and pulled out the official Privy Council documents she had uncovered. She did not say a word, merely pushing the minutes bearing Charles's own signature across the desk toward him, her index finger pressing firmly on the clause dictating the qualifications for royal patronage. Upon seeing the header of the minutes and his own familiar handwriting from years ago, King Charles's expression shifted instantly. His eyes widened, the lines on his forehead. Stern princess narrowed her eyes at the title line. The instinct of someone who had spent her entire life protecting the integrity of the crown immediately told her that something was very wrong behind her back. For the name of a commoner with no royal blood to appear on a supreme patronage list, especially at such a sensitive time and hidden from the Privy Council, was an insult to constitutional principles. The suspicion in Anne's heart quickly escalated into high alert, a severe constitutional crisis. Without a second of hesitation, Anne stood up, her face hardening with resolve. She knew she had to act immediately before the ink on that document could dry. The lamp on Princess Anne's desk remained brightly lit as darkness completely enveloped the palace corridors. She realized that her brother, under Camilla's influence, might be stepping across the red line of family favoritism. A mistake that could ignite. As she went into the layers of documents, the greater the sense of unease grew within the princess. Mandatory procedures, which had served as the framework protecting royal transparency for centuries, were being systematically stripped away. Normally, a proposal to appoint someone to this powerful patronage position had to undergo at least 3 independent rounds of vetting, starting from the Legal Advisory Board, moving through evaluations by relevant ministers, and finally receiving formal approval at a... Anne began her review with intense concentration, her sharp eyes not missing a single minor notation or administrative symbol on the newly delivered dossier, the deeper meeting of the Privy Council. Yet in this file, all of those steps were left blank or replaced by generic formalistic approvals from the King's private office. The haste was evident in every stamp, as if the private signing ceremony was about to commence. Clutching the leather briefcase tightly against her chest, Princess Anne strode directly toward the heavy wooden doors where the borderline between royal duty and family favoritism was about to be decided. The heavy oak door of the king's study suddenly swung open, cutting through the thick atmosphere of calculation that filled the room. Princess Anne stepped inside, bringing with her a rush of cold air from the corridor and an invisible pressure that made the 2 occupants inside turn palace garden, heading straight towards the king's private office. The evening wind blew hard, whipping against Anne's coat, but her steps never wavered, her face hardening under the crimson sunset. She noticed the guards in the outer courtyard beginning to shift positions, a sign that around in startlement. On the desk, the nib of King Charles III's fountain pen was mere millimeters away from the surface of the document. The sudden, unannounced appearance of his younger sister caused the king to freeze his gray eyebrows, knitting in displeasure from those outside the traditional bloodline. The gentle yet persistent urging from Camilla over the past few days had instilled in him a firm belief that he was doing the right thing for the future. Sitting opposite him, Queen Camilla quietly observed her husbands were erased to make way for flexibility and adaptation. He told himself that placing Tom Parker Bowles into the patronage position was not merely personal favoritism, but a testament to the royal family's readiness to expand and recognize contributions from and the king's compromise. In his private study, King Charles III lightly twirled the fountain pen in his hand, his eyes skimming over the formally printed lines on the document. In his mind, at this moment, was a panoramic vision of a renewed monarchy where outdated bounds every micro-movement. Her face bore her usual calm demeanor, but her fingers tightly interlaced in her lap betrayed a poorly concealed impatience. Every single tick of the clock in the room caused her chest to tighten. She understood clarity and detail, the constitutional prerequisites for the supreme patronage position Tom was about to receive. Every line of text seemed to dance under the lamp. A citizen with no royal blood must have at least 10 years of continuous dedication to public activities, or must receive a meeting. From several years ago, a document bearing the confirming signature of Charles himself when he was still the Prince of Wales. The page recorded with the absolute written consensus of the council to be legally qualified. Tom Parker Bowles, despite having a successful career of his own, fell completely short of either criterion. Attached to the back of the dossier pages that Camilla's faction had likely overlooked out of sheer overconfidence, Anne's fingers suddenly froze. She had just found the minutes of a secret Privy Council belief that Tom was entirely deserving of this opportunity to serve a royal family in need of renewal. As for Charles, he set the pen down on the desk, leaning back into his chair with the weariness and wounded pride of a monarch. At an act that was a clear breach of palace protocol, Anne's gaze locked instantly onto the paper resting on the desk, then swept over to Camilla's face. The air in the room plummeted to freezing point. Camilla straightened her back slightly, her usual polite smile vanishing, replaced instead. He looked at Anne with eyes full of self-importance, silently blaming his sister for being too conservative, always clinging to outdated dogmas without understanding that the monarchy had to evolve to survive. He believed that empowering someone as close as Tom was not self-interest, but by a sharp, defensive look. In her heart, the Queen felt a surge of resentment as she witnessed the flawless plan she had so painstakingly arranged threatened at the final hour. She shifted slightly closer to Charles, a subtle gesture to reaffirm their united front and consensus, while projecting her firm with calm but resolute movements. Anne flipped to the next pages of the document, analyzing the legal ramifications, placing them neatly beside the unsigned decree. She was using her actions to convey a fierce message. If that pen touched the paper, it would not merely be an internal decision aimed at stillness, but a psychological pressure weighing heavily upon the shoulders of the three individuals standing at the pinnacle of power. Princess Anne did not let the lull last too long. She took another step forward, aimed at modernization, as Charles mistakenly believed. It would be irrefutable proof of nepotism, a deliberate violation of constitutional process intended to bypass the Privy Council. Her finger remaining positioned on her brother's old signature as a ruthless reminder of duty. Her gaze never wavered from the changing expression on the face of King Charles III. Post position is far from merely honorary. It comes bundled with privileges historically reserved only for those who meet the most stringent royal standards. Yet just as the pieces...
But I think for my brother, this is something he's been waiting for, and he's probably spent more time thinking about it.
According to a bombshell source from within the corridors of power at Buckingham Palace, King Charles III has seemed perfectly aligned. An unexpected figure intervened to halt the decree in its tracks, Princess Anne. What followed is being described as one of the most intense confrontations. Allegedly succumbed to Queen Camilla's persuasion, secretly preparing to sign a monumental decree that could fundamentally alter the balance of power within the British monarchy. At the epicenter of this leaked dossier is a name that has left insiders stunned: Tom Parker Bowles, the Queen's son. Sources claim the proposed III, who succeeded to the throne after the passing of Queen Elizabeth II, sat in deep contemplation before the document. The burden of the crown and a desire to leave a legacy of renewal had always driven him to make bold, sometimes risky. The antique oak desk, a leather-bound dossier, lay silently under the warm glow of the lamp, awaiting a stroke of the pen that could alter the covert power structure of the monarchy. King Charles, is Camilla truly just securing her son's future? Or is there a grander, more calculated agenda at play? And what exactly lies within that secret dossier that drove Princess Anne to confront the king himself, determined to prevent that pen from ever hitting the paper? On the mutations ever witnessed within palace walls. The fallout has laid bare a web of classified documents, bypassed protocols, warnings of an unprecedented constitutional crisis, and a widening rift among senior royals. Case bearing the seal of the Constitutional Representative Office, over which she held influential authority. Anne pushed the draft toward Charles, her gaze terrifyingly stern. This action was an ultimatum if the document empowering Tom Parker Bowles review before Parliament and the public. This unspoken threat dealt a devastating blow to King Charles's psyche. A public constitutional review just a few years into his reign would be a public relations disaster. Was still passed. She would no longer save face for the family. As an independent member of the council and the guardian of traditional values, Anne would formally request a public constitutional status as the head of the monarchy, the person who held the supreme power to dictate the rules rather than be dictated by them. Yet Anne had anticipated this tacit resistance. To completely extinguish any thought of compromise, the princess played her final strategic card. She pulled a draft of an official statement from her leather brief. Interminable corridor, where the wall sconces had just been lit, casting faint shadows onto the ancient portraits. Despite having successfully thwarted a constitutional crisis at the final hour, Anne's heart felt no lighter. She understood that today's victory was merely a temporary step forward, gently gathering the Privy Council documents and the draft constitutional statement back into the black leather briefcase. Each of her movements was carried out with absolute solemnity and respect for the king. To Anne, this had never been a personal war to humble her brother or confront her sister-in-law. It was purely an imperative king in accordance with palace protocol, a gesture reaffirming her loyalty to the crown after having fulfilled her duty to warn him. Stepping out of the king's study, Anne walked along the imperative duty to protect the integrity of an institution she had sworn to serve her entire life. As the latch of the briefcase snapped shut with a crisp click, Anne bowed her head slightly to the signature. A flash of relief flickered in her eyes. All the silent preparation over the past months was about to bear fruit, requiring only a single stroke of ink. At the exact same time, on the other side of the palace, Princess Anne was under her arm like an invisible weapon. Anne's mind was stretched taut like a piano wire. She had attempted to contact the king's private office to request an urgent meeting, but had received nothing but evasive, time-buying responses from the courtiers of Camilla's faction. They were deliberately better than anyone that this document was the golden key to legitimizing her son's status, elevating Tom into the ranks of real influential power without drawing unwanted scrutiny. Seeing Charles's fingers shift slightly toward the blank space reserved for the walking with the speed of someone rushing into a life-or-death battle. The click of her heels against the marble floor echoed rapidly, shattering the usual stillness of the inner palace. The black leather briefcase was clamped tight, deepening as the memories of that past commitment came rushing back. The stark truth in black and white proved that Tom Parker Bowles fell completely short of the current standards, and that this signing would be a severe, deliberate violation of the rules. Had formed an invisible wall, utterly halting the confidence of the king and queen, driving them into an unforeseen stalemate. The silence enveloping the king's study was no longer mere standing beside him. Camilla also paled slightly as she realized the existence of this legal weapon, which she had carelessly overlooked while clearing the path for her son. The room fell into an ominous silence, broken only by the dry ticking of the antique clock on the wall. The stage of power had now completely inverted. The weight of the past, of strict constitutional rules, and Princess Anne's icy resolve treat for the forces wishing to alter the royal structure. The pressure of a modern society, complex family dynamics, and the next generation's desire to expand the boundaries of power would always remain undertows, waiting to surge. Walking into the shadows of the palace corridor, the aging princess understood that the battle to protect the core principles of the monarchy would be a long journey with no end in sight. After reading required to protect the survival of the royal family against the turbulent tides of the modern era. Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it. This story, in your opinion, was Princess Anne's fierce intervention, an act of stubborn conservatism clinging to outdated rules? Or was it the necessary level-headedness and courage blocking every avenue of approach, attempting to erect a blockade to ensure the signing moment proceeded smoothly? That blatant obstruction only fanned the flames of resolve in the princess's heart. She could not afford to delay for even a single second. As she hurried through the compromise was a betrayal of the principles that their mother, the late Queen Elizabeth II, had spent her entire life preserving. That realization pushed Anne's determination to its peak. She no longer cared about complying with the cumbersome protocols of requesting an audience. Instead of turning into the guest walkway, she took a shortcut through the corridors lined with portraits of past monarchs. Anne quickly opened the supplementary file in her hand to re-verify a core detail she had just uncovered. Her eyes stopped at a handwritten note in the margin of the old Privy Council meeting minutes. It was Charles's own handwriting confirming he was fully aware of and agreed to the strict limitations regarding granting patronage to commoners. This discovery was like a splash of cold water onto Anne's remaining respect for her brother's decision. This was not an accident or ignorance on the king's part. He knew the law perfectly well, yet chose to ignore it under the influence of personal affection. This Camilla, the woman who had walked with him through countless storms of public opinion to be officially recognized as the Queen Consort of the United Kingdom in 2023. For a long time, she had constantly fretted over the status of her own children, those who lived in the glare of royal glamour, yet remained on the fringes of official privileges. At this moment, her gaze was fixed intently on the dossier, which bore the name of Tom Parker Bowles, her eldest son from her first marriage. Tom was already a well-known food critic and writer in Britain, but in his mother's eyes, he deserved a more secure and influential position within the royal patronage system. Camilla had spent weeks whispering sweet words into the king's ear about an expanded royal family decisions. Charles believed that opening their arms to new elements, even those without direct royal bloodlines, was a necessary step for the royal family to integrate into a new era. Standing right beside him was Queen stood tall to preserve her last shred of pride before turning her face away, avoiding the stark reality. Princess Anne received her brother's decision with astonishment.